Remember sitting in school, staring at the board, convinced that your teacher knew absolutely everything? We copied diagrams, memorized charts, and absorbed facts like they were delivered straight from the universe. Adults never lie, right? Right? Fast forward to today. And plot twist. A shocking amount of what we learned was either oversimplified, misunderstood, or just completely invented. But here's the wild part. Many ancient cultures, without satellites, labs, or textbooks, were often closer to the real truth of the world than our modern classrooms ever were. So today, we're diving into 24 indigenous myths that sound impossible on the surface. But modern science keeps proving they were rooted in something very real. Storm-making birds, forests that actually talk, caves that scream, bats straight out of nightmares, rivers that boil small animals alive. This is the kind of video that makes you question your entire education, and maybe reality itself. If you're ready to see where myth and science collide, hit that subscribe button. Take a breath, and let's step into a world where legends weren't lies. Myth 1. The Thunderbird. What if one of North America's most feared sky monsters wasn't a myth at all, but a real animal powerful enough to shake the air itself? For generations, tribes described the Thunderbird, a storm-calling giant whose wings created thunder. Outsiders dismissed it, until paleontologists uncovered Argentavis magnificens, a prehistoric bird with a 20-foot wingspan and bones built like natural aircraft struts. Here's the twist. This creature could ride violent thermal winds for miles, creating deep, booming sounds as it soared. The Thunderbird wasn't fantasy. It was a cultural memory of a sky-dominating titan that vanished, but never disappeared from story. Myth 2. The Wendigo. What if one of the coldest monsters in northern folklore wasn't supernatural at all, but a terrifying collapse of the human mind? Tribes describe the Wendigo as a winter spirit of hunger that turned people violent, restless, and endlessly starving. For years, outsiders mocked it, until psychology documented Wendigo psychosis, where individuals genuinely believe they're transforming into cannibalistic predators. Add prion diseases like Kuru, causing tremors, paranoia, and personality distortion. And suddenly, the myth aligns with real neurological breakdowns. The Wendigo wasn't a tale of demons. It was an early warning about starvation, isolation, and the fragility of the human mind. Myth 3. Whispering forests. What if the forest legends about trees that talk weren't poetic metaphors but literal biological communication? Amazonian tribes insisted the jungle could whisper warnings, messages passing tree to tree long before danger arrived. Western science laughed, until discovering airborne chemical signals, electrical pulses through root networks, and nutrient exchanges carried by fungi. A real wood-wide web hidden beneath the soil. When insects attack, trees alert their neighbors. When one weakens, others send support. The myth wasn't fantasy. It was ecological science observed centuries early. The forest truly speaks. Humans just lacked the vocabulary to understand how. Myth 4. Shape-shifting shamans. What if ancient stories of shamans turning into jaguars weren't describing magic, but transformations of perception and ritual? Tribes told of figures who became half-human, half-beast during ceremonies. Archaeology revealed trance states induced by rhythmic drumming, breathwork, and plant medicines that alter body awareness. Add jaguar masks, glowing body paint, and fire-lit shadows, and a person's movements shift into something truly predatory. To onlookers, the human shape blurred, the animal identity dominated. This wasn't physical shape-shifting. It was psychological embodiment so intense it became indistinguishable from myth. The legend captured a ritual designed to change the mind, not the body. Myth 5. Invisible people. What if ancient warnings about invisible tribes weren't exaggerations, but observations of people who mastered silence and concealment? Amazonian groups spoke of communities that moved through the forest unseen. For centuries, it sounded impossible, until LiDAR uncovered massive hidden settlements beneath the canopy, proving entire civilizations existed undetected. Today, uncontacted tribes still navigate using elevated root systems, leave no footprints, and disturb almost nothing. To outsiders, they appeared and vanished like ghosts. The myth wasn't about magic. It was about skill, knowledge, and survival. Myth 6: Cities swallowed by the jungle. What if stories about cities devoured by vines weren't metaphors at all, but accurate descriptions of entire civilizations hidden beneath green? Explorers heard tales of lost cities swallowed by the rainforest. Centuries later, LiDAR scanning revealed enormous settlements, Angamuco, Upano Valley, and others, buried under dense vegetation. Homes, temples, plazas, irrigation networks, all preserved beneath roots instead of destroyed by them. Nature didn't erase these places. It quietly covered them like a living archive. The myth wasn't fantasy. It was memory. Remnants of once thriving societies waiting for technology to find what the jungle chose to hide. Myth 7: Skinwalkers. What if the terrifying stories of shape-shifting skinwalkers came not from magic, but from real ritual specialists engineered to scare? Among the Navajo, skinwalkers were said to turn into wolves and coyotes under the desert moon. Archaeology revealed ritual societies that wore animal hide suits, reflective pigments, and articulated masks that glowed or snapped in firelight. At night, these figures moved like nothing human. Their silhouettes stretched, their eyes shimmered, their sounds echoed. To a traveler alone in the desert, one glance was enough to spark generations of fear. The myth didn't invent monsters. It described people meant to look like them. Myth 8: The Dark River Curse. What if cursed rivers that swallowed people without a sound were actually natural death traps waiting beneath calm water? Amazonian tribes warned of rivers that claimed lives instantly. Science later found hidden whirlpools, submerged logs, rock shelves, and suction pits capable of pulling victims under with no splash and no struggle. In communities without diving gear or rescue tools, such disappearances felt supernatural. A person stepped in and vanished. The river wasn't haunted. It was engineered by nature to be merciless. The myth preserved a life-saving truth. Some waters kill quietly, and fear can be a form of survival. Myth 9: Headless monsters. What if the infamous headless giants, seen by early explorers, were actually elite warriors disguised through brilliant visual design? Records describe towering figures with no heads and faces on their chests. Archaeology shows many tribes used large carved helmets that extended above the skull, paired with chest plates painted with faces or animal snarls. In dense jungle, shadows hid the real head while the chest art stood out, creating the illusion of a giant with no neck and a face on its torso. The myth wasn't hallucination. It was a misread of ceremonial armor meant to intimidate anyone who approached. Myth 10: Stone giants. What if legends of warriors made of stone came from real armor centuries ahead of its time? Indigenous stories described fighters whose bodies couldn't be pierced by arrows. Archaeologists later found interlocking stone plates sewn into leather, flexible, overlapping armor that acted like an ancient bulletproof vest. In sunlight, the polished scales gleamed like carved rock. In battle, weapons shattered against it. From afar, the warriors truly looked sculpted from stone. The myth didn't exaggerate their strength. It honored an engineering feat so advanced that even enemies believed they were facing something more than human. Myth 11: Moon-eyed people. What if the Cherokee stories of pale, large-eyed cave dwellers weren't fantasy, but traces of a real group pushed underground? Legends describe people who avoided sunlight and lived in caverns. Archaeologists found early European-style metalwork, unusual mitochondrial markers, and cave settlements with symbols resembling Welsh carvings, all predating Columbus. These outsiders may have fled into caves after conflict, adapting to darkness with widened pupils and light avoidance habits. To the Cherokee, they appeared ghostly and strange. The moon-eyed people myth wasn't about supernatural beings. It was an encounter with an isolated, vulnerable community surviving in shadows. Myth 12. Mapinguari. What if the monstrous Mapinguari, a towering creature that smelled awful and left backward tracks, was a surviving memory of a prehistoric titan? Amazonian tribes described it as massive, clawed, and unbearably foul. Paleontology shows the giant ground sloth, Megatherium, matched this perfectly. Over 20 feet tall, armed with huge claws, walking in a way that made its tracks appear reversed, and producing a powerful musky odor from scent glands. Long after extinction, stories persisted of a lumbering night beast tearing through foliage. The Mapinguari wasn't a fantasy predator. It was cultural memory of a megafaunal giant that once roamed the rainforest. Myth 13. Star beings. What if the star beings said to teach astronomy weren't extraterrestrial visitors, but human scientists, so ahead of their time they seemed otherworldly? Many tribes described sky people who shared knowledge of seasons, eclipses, and cosmic cycles. Archaeology later uncovered indigenous earthworks and structures aligned with astonishing precision to solstices, lunar standstills, planetary paths, and stellar events. These societies mastered the sky without telescopes, mapping celestial patterns generations before Western science caught up. To those unfamiliar with astronomical technique, such mastery felt supernatural. The myth wasn't about aliens. It was about experts whose intelligence outshined explanation. Myth 14. Fire serpent. What if the glowing serpents said to slither through thunderstorms were describing one of Earth's rarest electrical mysteries? Tribes told of fiery snakes floating across the sky, twisting silently before exploding. Modern science identifies ball lightning, a plasma phenomenon that glides horizontally, flickers, stretches into tube-like shapes, and vanishes in sudden pops of energy. Even today, researchers struggle to study it. To ancient observers facing storms without shelter, these drifting orbs looked alive, intentional, and terrifying. The fire serpent myth wasn't imagined. It was a direct account of a natural event so rare it still puzzles scientists now. Myth 15. Spirit animals. What if spirit animals weren't supernatural guides, but the mind revealing its deepest symbols in moments of altered awareness? Vision quests often described wolves, eagles, or bears offering messages or warnings. Modern psychology explains this as archetypal projection, powerful subconscious images rising during fasting, isolation, rhythmic drumming, or sensory deprivation. These states activate symbolic thinking, causing emotions to take the shape of animals tied to identity or instinct. To those experiencing it, the encounters felt undeniably real. The myth didn't invent magical creatures. It recorded the human mind speaking in its oldest language, metaphor. Myth 16. Whistling caves. What if haunted caves that whispered, moaned, or sang were actually natural sound machines sculpted by time? Many cultures warned that caves spoke with ghostly voices. Geology later revealed that wind passing cave mouths creates Helmholtz resonance, the same principle behind blowing across a bottle. Underground streams vibrate like tuning forks, and dripping water shapes stalactites that ring when struck. Deep inside, echoes bend into word-like patterns. To ancient travelers hearing disembodied whispers in total darkness, the effect felt supernatural. The myth wasn't wrong. The caves truly spoke, just through physics instead of spirits. Myth 17. The death bat. What if stories of giant bats snatching children came from encounters with an enormous real species now extinct? Tribes told of monstrous bats that blotted out campfires with a single wingspan. Paleontologists later discovered Desmodus draculae, the giant vampire bat, with a 2-foot wingspan, sharp teeth, and a predatory silhouette that looked terrifying in moonlight. While it didn't hunt people, it fed on large animals and flew low, casting huge shadows across the ground. One encounter with this creature in the dark could fuel generations of fear. The myth wasn't a wild invention. It was eyewitness shock. Myth 18. Walking trees. What if stories of trees slowly changing locations weren't folktales, but observations of real plant behavior? Amazonian groups claimed certain trees could walk. Botanists confirmed the walking palm, Socratea exoryza, grows new stilt roots towards sunlight while letting older ones die, allowing the tree to shift several feet over time. To observers tracking the forest over seasons, the tree genuinely seemed to migrate. It didn't chase people or move visibly, but its gradual steps were unmistakable. The myth wasn't wrong. It simply described movement on a timescale humans rarely notice. Myth 19. Water panthers. What if the lake monster with horns, scales, and glowing eyes was a real animal, just not the one people imagined? Tribes describe the water panther as a huge armored predator lurking beneath still lakes. Biologists point to the lake sturgeon, a prehistoric fish over 7 feet long, covered in bony plates, with whisker-like barbels and reflective eyes that shine ominously at dusk. When it surfaced, its long body cut through water like a serpent. To someone in a canoe centuries ago, it looked exactly like a mythic creature. The water panther wasn't fantasy. It was misread biology. Myth 20. Man-eating lakes. What if lakes said to consume people were actually hiding lethal forces beneath calm surfaces? Tribes avoided certain waters where swimmers vanished without splash or sound. Modern science found 2 killers: flesh-eating bacteria thriving in warm, stagnant lakes, and CO2-charged killer lakes where volcanic gases build up until they erupt upward, suffocating anything nearby in seconds. Lake Nyos proved how devastating this can be, wiping out entire villages without visible cause. To ancient observers, people collapsing near water or disappearing without a fight felt supernatural. The myth preserved a crucial truth: some lakes kill quietly. Myth 21. Forest spirits and medicine. What if shamans claiming plants told them their uses were describing an intuitive research method rather than magic? Many healers said forest spirits guided them to cure or poison. Ayahuasca proves something remarkable happened. Its recipe combines a DMT-containing plant with another containing MAO inhibitors, a biochemical pairing nearly impossible to discover by chance among 80,000 species. Indigenous healers refined this knowledge through observation, experimentation, and generations of learning. The myth wasn't literal conversation with spirits. It was a metaphor for deep intuition and cultural science that created one of the world's most sophisticated medicinal systems. Myth 22. Vulture messengers. What if vultures seen as soul carriers were actually performing an essential public health role? Many tribes believed vultures carried the dead to the sky. Biologists later discovered vultures can digest deadly pathogens, anthrax, cholera, plague bacteria, that would devastate human communities. Sky burials prevented disease spread while giving families a spiritual way to honor their dead. Watching a vulture rise with a body part truly looked like a soul ascending. The myth blended symbolism and biology perfectly. These birds weren't just messengers of the spirit world. They were guardians of the living. Myth 23. The boiling river. What if a river said to cook animals alive was dismissed as a legend simply because no one bothered to check? Amazonian locals warned of a river that hissed, steamed, and killed instantly. Scientists eventually visited and measured temperatures near 200 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to strip flesh in seconds. Strangely, no volcano was nearby. Instead, hidden geothermal vents pushed scalding water through cracks beneath the earth. Branches sizzled on contact. Animals that fell in never resurfaced. The myth wasn't superstition. It was meticulous observation of a geological anomaly that outsiders doubted until the evidence literally boiled before them. Myth 24. Black Jaguar Guardians. What if the belief in black jaguars as protectors came from real behavioral patterns witnessed over generations? Amazonian tribes viewed melanistic jaguars as guardians who appeared during danger and vanished when peace returned. Biologists found these black jaguars behaved differently from spotted ones. More cautious, more territorial, and sometimes tolerant of familiar human groups. Their dark coats make them nearly invisible at night, and their glowing eyes create a haunting presence in the trees. To those living alongside them, they seemed selective, purposeful, almost watchful. The myth wasn't fantasy. It was respect for a predator that moved like a shadow. We've just walked through a world where giant birds ruled the skies. Rivers boiled. Forests whispered. Caves sang, and creatures long thought imaginary left fossil footprints behind. The most important lesson? Myth was never the opposite of truth. It was the first language humanity used to explain a world that was overwhelming, beautiful, and sometimes terrifying. Modern science doesn't erase these stories. It completes them. Every time we decode a legend, we don't debunk a culture, we honor it. So if one of today's myths blew your mind, tell me which one. Was it the Thunderbird? The boiling river? The walking trees? Or maybe the giant sloth that stank up the rainforest? And if you want more journeys like this, mysteries where folklore meets facts, hit that like button, share this video with someone curious, and subscribe for the next deep dive into the hidden truths of our world. Because the more we discover, the more we realize our ancestors weren't telling stories. They were leaving us clues.